think definitely good morning to all of you. Thanks again for your commitment. In this Friday morning, such a good weather, and I'm pretty sure that all of you will definitely gonna have a good day and good weekend. Yeah. Just a little bit of background about myself. My name is Rashidin, or you can call me Eddie. Actually, I'm technically the head of commercial Malaysia in Center of Applied Data Science, and I've been with CADS for the past 1 year plus, and I'm very excited to technically be a part of a CADS journey, whereby our mission is to future-proof the world. And when we're talking about future-proofing the world, it sounds like a very ambitious, very visionary again. I think at the end of the day, what's far more important for us is how are we going to ensure that each of us, as an individual in Malaysia, in this region, globally, are all data literate. Yeah. So a little bit of our CADS, or Center of Applied Data Science. So we are technically uh, an organizations, or I would say a startup rather, then I technically would say the innovative enough, right? When we have this vision and mission to future-proof the world, and we also deal with a lot of entities out there, not only from large organizations, but we also come down to communities, to individuals, financial institutions, education institutions, to bring these people together and make sure everyone are data literate. Yeah. So let's go back to our session today when we're talking about staying visionary while innovative in challenging circumstances. I will try to make this session as interactive as possible. Please, by all means, if let's say, for example, you have any input, any comments, kind of thing along the way, please raise your hand. I'm pretty sure I would need to hear your experiences as well when it comes to this innovation, right? And I'm pretty sure like all of us here at Technical Specialists, majority of you definitely have done something before innovative enough, and I would like to hear those experiences as well. Yeah. So yes, what is innovation to you, and technically why transformation matters? Yeah. So innovation is such a big word. Innovation, when we're talking about innovation, we're talking about if let's say, for example, you go to you go to any company website, and then within 30 seconds, right, you will see their website will say, driving the business, how, working with customers, how. Yeah. And you will see a lot of word innovations out there everywhere, being for like large organizations, from insurance industries, banking industries, to even like public sectors, right? You will see like this innovation was everywhere. And I think in these days as well, when we are looking at how innovation has changed our life, and it is a far more important, dated back, it's last 100 years ago, with a lot of innovations happen, as simple as the pills that you had, right? It's a supplementary pills for medication, and to really improve your health. So all these are innovation, right? So, but not only that, we're not only talking about the commercial innovation we're talking about. We're also looking at the social innovations. So this is something that are far more interesting as well, because to some extent, some people or innovative figures out there, when they do innovation, it's not only to make money. Yeah, for them, is what's far more important. The social value they can get out of it is giving them a more satisfaction in life. Yeah. So, what is technically innovation, right? So, in a simple definition, it's all about creating value from the ideas, and that value, like I mentioned just now, could be from a commercial standpoint, and also it could be from social standpoint, and it could be the combination of both too, right? So, again, different people would have a different intention why they want to become innovative. Large organization, for example, when we are talking about businesses, yeah, as simple as a smartphone back then, which has been impressive in terms of giving impact to us, to society. And definitely some businesses that make fortune out of it, for example, like Apple, your Samsung, your Huawei, and all. And definitely it's tremendously changed our life for the past many, many years. Yeah. And we're also looking into several hundred years ago when the printing press is a really a revolutionary back then. It has definitely changed the way we communicate with each other, right? I mean, for the past many, many years, without phone and tablets, so a lot of people, or all of us, were relying on newspapers to get ourselves updated. And definitely, we read a lot of things from there. And I mean, of course, the flying these days is a very common experience, and definitely we owe it a lot to the Wright brothers in the early attempts to create the values for these ideas, right? The plane ideas. And I think if I were to look back, is probably originally back 400 years ago when the Leonardo da Vinci sketches in his notebooks about possibilities of flying, possibilities of moving from one place to another. And if I were to look at the list of innovators, there is a lot, right? We can name a lot of them, like Samuel Langley, like a Gustav Whitehead, so on and so forth. So that's technically more of the commercial value side. So what about like something that really close to our heart as well? And we're pretty sure that now many of us wouldn't be around if we don't have all these range of pharmaceutical medicines, particularly like antibiotics, right? That become so important since the World War II. And we are also looking at the invention of car, the innovation of car, giving the world a new means of transportation, moving from one place to another, right? And Henry Ford at that time, his motto was a car for every man and at a price every man can afford, right? And eventually, until now, we do see that Elon Musk innovate, his range of companies, from like a typical cars, all the way to electric cars, and these are technically something that a lot of us truly understand and have seen in the real world. So that's more on the commercial value side. So what about the social value part of it? So if you have heard about this brand, they call it M-Pesa, and this product is technically originally from Kenya. It was developed between Vodafone and also the British Department of International Development. So how does this work is it allows individuals to use a mobile phone to move money around. Yeah, and it's technically the idea of transferring the mobile credits. It allows individuals to use the mobile phone to move money around. And at the same time, what we understand is by these transfers of mobile credits, it takes up half of the domestic gross national product of Kenya, and even until now. Yeah. So in this case, or in this part of the world, Kenya, money can be a little bit difficult for them to gain, right? I think at the end of the day, what type of currency is far more important for them is either the cash notes or mobile credits. And people know to get money, to get cash notes is very difficult sometimes. And when the connection is good and when there are connection somewhere, and they know that by using the credits is far more easier for them, right? And I'm not sure whether you have heard about this brand called Plumpy Nut. Yeah. So this is something like a Nutella. It's a super concentrated version in a sachet, whereby it used to have extremely malnourished children in a famine situation. Yeah. So these also serve as a very important innovations, probably in like the likes of African continent, whereby to get a nutritious food is very, very difficult, right? And not only that, we also have seen these lifestyle product, whereby like again in that part of the world to get like a clean water is almost impossible, right? So by having all these innovations, it's really have saved a lot of life, and you have really definitely like a change a lot of our life at the same time. Yeah. So if you were to look at innovation, we have seen doesn't happen just like the cartoons, right? You see the cartoons, light bulbs, and have some ideas, and eventually you can get, make it like real, right? So the idea is the start of process, but those ideas might not necessarily recruit some values, right? So we can have a lot of ideas, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the execution part of it. So what is far more important and interesting is like the journey of voyage towards the value creation is it didn't start like a few years back. We started this back in hundred for the past 100 years ago. Yeah, and I think what's far more important is all of us knew about it. It's just a matter of why and when we want to do it. And if you were to look at the typical people that always be innovative kind of thing, we always talk about entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, they always have the innovative mindset in order for them to survive their business, right? In order for them to survive their life. So this is like a nothing new for them, for entrepreneurs to become innovative. And we also look at the range of startups. Startups nowadays have become a more inventive, all right, more innovative. So they are looking at, for example, nowadays, in the recent announcement in the second quarter of this year, we're talking about digital banks, right? And we see like a quite number of startups that take part into this initiative. So growing organizations as well, in order for them to maintain the business, sustain the business, they need to innovate. They need to come up with something new. They need to be able to understand their current existing products won't survive for the next 5 to 10 years, given the technology now is very fast, right? Social innovators, yes. Some of the key figures we are talking about, they use a social platforms, for them to create a social values, and they come up with a lot of interesting things. And I think at the end of the day, it's all of us. It's each of us, the individuals, definitely, able to innovate anything, right? It just matter whether you want it or otherwise. Yeah. So if you were to look at some of the figures out there, for example, Amancio Ortega, so maybe like you're not too sure who is he. Even I don't even know who is he at the end. I mean, at the beginning, right? So he is technically the owner of a Zara brand, and technically not only Zara brand, there are a few other brands, and he's the founder of this. So he started off with, when he was a little kid, when he was 14, he started off selling products, selling a nightwear and quilted bathrobes back in 1963. And one fine day, when he was like managing his small businesses, when he was running around with bicycles to ensure the sales and the manufacturing of his products are there, then it triggered him. He's going around looking at the different materials, different products. So why can't he has his own brand and his own chain of brands, fashion brands, then try to make money out of it, right? So now we understand that his motive is technically more on the commercial values. So if we were to look at these another figures, Dr. G. Venkataswamy, so some people call it Dr. V. So he's technically uh, an Indian ophthalmologist who dedicated his life to eliminate needless blindness. And he was actually a founder and a former chairman of Aravind Eye Hospitals. And back in 1976, he retired from his day-to-day job as eye surgeon to really dedicate his life to this particular problem. So when he was back in his home country, when he was in his own village, a lot of people has come to him and complained that the cataract problem is something is very very a lot of cases there at that particular time. And he tell himself that, hey, why can't I open this up a small clinic for people to come, and I don't charge them a lot. It would be as simple as like $1 at that time. Yeah. And I think up to now, he was successfully, and as a result, somewhere around 12 million has benefited from his innovations. Yeah. So his innovations, coming from a specialist working in a hospital, now he goes back, open up a small clinic to ensure that a lot of people can have their eyes treated with a very low cost of money. Yeah. And again, I think all of us have seen innovation is really about people. It's not about organization who push us to be innovative. It doesn't work that way, right? So I just want to go back a little bit of some of the example I shared earlier, which is the mobile phone, right? And I think if all of us understand or aware that these little device give us a more communication power than the prime minister, right, of a UK 50 years back, or even President Kennedy 50 years back, right? So this statement is really like showing us that technology is giving us a whole new world with a whole new opportunities. It's really like a take, before this, half of the population of the US to actually had one phone. It took them 50 years. But fast forward a century later, the first wireless phone was introduced. And it took only like 16 years before half of the US population owned one. All right. And a few years later, the first smartphone came. And it's only 6 years for people to own that. So what does this really mean? You know? So this really shows that the technology is developing itself in a very exponential pace. And this really shows that the adoption time, or technically the time it takes for us to adopt something new, is decreasing dramatically. Yeah. So we would definitely say that innovation is something that close our heart. Everything we do see something new. Everything we do see something being invented, kind of thing. And this really has a huge implication to us, to the society, but I mean also to the whole business landscape. It really means that organizations that want to stay relevant in the future really need to start innovating. And I think, luckily enough, that according to some studies, majority of the CEOs in large organizations, they do say that innovation is a key priority. But however, I think all of us understand, like saying so and execute it is two different things, right? And of course, it's not about having just a broad idea on how to innovate, but what are we going to do with it? Yeah. So in my next sections, what we're talking about is why innovation is about people. And the very first thing is I don't definitely understand. Innovative is very hard, and why definitely so, right? So if I were to look into a perspective of organization, so we are looking at doing something new and something different. And the question begs is my organization flexible enough for it? Yeah. So I would say that many of our larger organizations these days, they are not set up for new and different things. So if you've seen that for one company, so based on statistics and the research, for one company to have a new vision and mission, it takes them 7 to 10 years. And within these 7 to 10 years, typically they don't really open up to something new or something that could disrupt the whole ideas, right? And I would call this an immune system. This is something like a corporate antibodies that technically will come and attack any new and different things or people. I think all of us definitely have experienced it before. We come into new organizations, we try to disrupt the boat, we try to rock the boat and try to disrupt certain things, and you will see there are a couple of noises out there saying that, hey, you cannot do that. We have done this for the longest and it's proven successful. So why do we need the new things here, right? So secondly, we're talking about innovations. It's rather long-term result versus a corporate short-term KPIs. I mean, it's a very statement simply because that if it were to look at your KPI, it's technically to address your current year, right? Your current performance. So you need to do all these things. You need to check all these KPIs that technically could give or could contribute to the organization for that particular year. All right. So what does this mean? Why do something new if it's why are we doing something new if it doesn't contribute now? Right. So a lot of organizations out there they will say, okay, so you are trying to being innovative here. So tell me when I can get a result, when I can get the ROI. So then when people say that, okay, give me like a 3 to 5 years, and definitely you're gonna get shot down, simply because that it's too long for us, and we cannot wait for that, right? And thirdly, I think we also see that even though a lot of organizations say, of course, you're allowed to be innovative, right? You're allowed to fail, but in reality, failure is not an option for employees, right? And what's far more important is having to understand the failure, especially in this particular region of the world, there will be some repercussions out of it. If let's say, for example, you're trying to do something new and you fail, then I mean, of course, either you get fired or you get transferred to different departments, and there's not so much of encouragement being done by the superiors or by the employers these days. So I'm pretty sure, you know, everybody knows this brand, everybody knows this product. What do they have? Yeah. So what we're looking at is, a study back in Oxford back in 2015. So at that particular time, they were looking at the biggest 500 organizations in the world, and they predict that almost half of it will no longer exist by 2020. So we're taking aside the pandemic issues. So let's look beyond the pandemic, right? Where it is a known fact that a lot of organizations are no longer exist due to safety and health concern. But when this particular prediction was made, why the hypothesis was as such? Why did Oxford says that half of the 500 biggest organizations will vanish out of nowhere after 5 years? And all of us understand that the simple answer to this is whether or not organizations could adapt to the change of technology, right? And yes, this particular product, I think maybe some of you know that they are not yet died off, but rather in a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They're still there, but they just are paying off the debt and try to restructure the organization, so on and so forth. But this brand is something that we have known dominated the market in the earlier of 20th century. We are looking at the Pan Am as well. It's one of the biggest airlines names in the early part of 20th century, and it helped build the airline industry after the World War II. But however, unfortunately enough, they're not able to innovate fast enough to stay in the market. And I mean, lastly, again, this is something brand that all of us have seen before as well. It started off as a humble timber products company, which eventually blossomed to become a mobile phone company. And because they didn't fast enough in terms of accelerating the innovations, so it led them to failures, right? So now the biggest question is, whether or not you have the right people to be innovative in your organizations or not, right? So what kind of people you have in your team? What kind of people you're working with? So innovation is all about finding the right people around you, and definitely people that are passionate enough about what they do and want to drive a change. And I mean, of course, this has huge implications. How do we cope with this change, right? How do we remain competitive and innovative as an organizations? And interesting thing about it is like most of these organizations are trying to solve 21st century problems. However, I think if you were to look carefully, majority of us, a majority of organizations out there, they were designed in the 20th century and maybe even the 19th century. And what they're looking at is what they have done good successfully, and they're not going to change just because they have been successfully for the past few years, right? So I really truly believe that to be innovative as organizations is really not about finding the bright ideas. It's not about having all these processes in place or having innovation in your strategy, but rather it's finding the right people around you, those people who are passionate enough. So just a little bit of like an understanding, right? Have you ever experienced like something like this before in your organizations? Whereby you have these crazy ideas, for example, simplify your work processes, or you're coming up with some extraordinary product mockups, whatever not. But at the end of the day, you're not being supported by your superior or by your team, right? So I'm pretty sure all of us have experienced that before. So again, I think back in our organizations, we've done a lot of activities, ideation, generating a lot of ideas, the brainstorm sessions. And I mean, of course, we have heard that innovation is all about creativity. It's basically that it's really about finding and fostering the right people. And if you give them the right conditions, then you will see that they can drive a tremendous change. Yeah. Now, what are the conditions that technically you can have? What are the right conditions you can have in your organizations? The first thing is like you need to understand these passionate people, they don't see obstacles, but rather they see possibilities. They don't see the impossibilities, but they do see opportunities. And they don't really work because the boss tells them, right? But rather they work on what they believe in something. And I think eventually, I mean, of course, these passionate people, they don't work for salary, but rather they have a work purpose. But I mean, of course, money will make everyone happy, right? But I think at the end of the day, if you're really excited about your job, about your work, what you can contribute back, you will have a bigger purpose than just money, right? So now the question becomes like, how can we, as a person, as an individual, as a manager, as a leader in our organizations, give the right people, give our people the right conditions. Yeah. So the condition we're talking about just now is how we can give them that possibilities, how we can give them that opportunities, the belief and the purpose. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, this is probably something that a little bit difficult for some organizations out there. Hire people based on the patient and based on the skills. And now, why is it when we look at the resume, we hire people based on what they have done before, right? It really doesn't look forward on what is it that you want or to do, or what you want to achieve as a person. So, we believe that hiring people with patience is something that can have or can provide you with the right conditions and being innovative as organization. So secondly is creating a safe environment for these people. It really makes no sense to have a passionate people, but however we have these corporate antibodies attacking them, right? So you need to create a place where they can fully spend their time and dedication working on whatever they feel is the most valuable for the organization. So, and lastly is we really need to provide an avenue for these people to be innovative and without any repercussion. So this environment is for them to stimulate the failure and the entrepreneurship mentality in organizations. So again, I think I just mentioned about the entrepreneurship here. Entrepreneurship is not necessarily for you to become an individual and have your own company, but rather you can have this mindset and entrepreneurship skill set in your organization. So I'm pretty sure as a manager, as a leader in your organization too. So you are the one who's like, hey, I want every each of my people creative enough to solve the problems in order for them to help the company. So nowadays you don't really look into you don't really look into people that is a yes man, can do work all the time and don't go above and beyond, because they gone are the days that we have these so-called people that just obey to whatever instruction we give. Yeah? So we are looking at someone is creative enough, venturing into something, uncharted territories, someone that think out of the box. So these are the generational people that we're looking at for the future. So that was about people, a little bit of people. Why we need innovative people? Why innovative people can eventually help your organizations at the end of the day, right? But however, as an organizations in this post-crisis era, so we are looking at what are the business leaders' priorities when it comes to innovation. So we understand that as the early part of the pandemic at that time, and back in 2020, a lot of organizations out there they're looking at, you know, wait and see kind of approach. I want to see what my competitor is doing. What are they going to do differently? How are they adapting to this new normal? So all these questions has meant a lot of organizations don't take a leap face upwards, right? So they don't really look into like what are the possibilities of what are the new opportunities can comes in. But the best thing they can tell is, if you're not surprised, is when we talk to a lot of business leaders out there, they said, well, being innovative not necessarily like only on people. So we are innovative in the sense that we don't have this system before, but now we have this new system. So we are innovative in the sense that we have changed our business processes from manual into more automated. Yes, it is a bit of innovation, but it was a false innovation. You have to adapt to it because of the pandemic. You have to adapt to it, otherwise the business wouldn't run, or otherwise you won't get the profit that you have actually planned for, right? So let's look into the perspective of organizations, how innovations technically would be able to help them as an individual, as an organizations. So let's take a bit of an overview on this study by McKinsey and Company. And they say that in the COVID-19 crisis present an opportunity that few feel equipped to pursue. You see the numbers here, the 90% believe that the COVID-19 crisis will fundamentally change the way they do business over the next 5 years. It's common sense, right? So like I mentioned just now, when all organizations are looking at equipping the new technology, the new systems, the new approaches, yes, of course, it will fundamentally change the way they do business. But however, the question becomes, are you improving your business based on your current products and services? Or you're looking into being innovative in providing a different way or different things to your customers? It will be two different things, right? And secondly, we're looking at 85% of the business leaders concerned that the COVID-19 crisis will have a lasting impact on their customers' needs and wants over the next 5 years. It's a very, very valid concern simply because that if let's say for example, you know, we can say a very simple example. Those days when people are prefer to buy items or the stuff in a brick and mortar shops, right? And nowadays we do see that a lot of like senior citizens, even like for example my mom, my parents, so those days they like to go to the shops and they like to do shoppings kind of thing. But during the pandemic time, they are somehow forced to do by everything online. Even come down to the vegetables, the fish, I mean the food stuff and all the raw materials. They have to do it online. And even until now, hopefully post-pandemic, they're still using it as a means, as a medium for them to buy the grocery stuff. Yeah. So then comes down to like the concern of the business leaders. They say that, hey, if let's say for example, these kind of customers need and want have changed over the next 5 years, how ready I am to be a part of the journey, right? And I mean, of course, if we were to look at how equipped are they to face the challenge, 25% have the expertise, the resources, and commitment to pursue the new growth successfully, right? And a two-thirds of them believe that this will be the most challenging moment in their executive career. So, again, the biggest question here is, are you ready or not to go through this post-pandemic era with the same mindset, or are you going to do it differently? And a majority of like industries also have a look at the highest change in terms of the opportunity of growth coming from technology part and the consumer packaged goods. And as much as 21% of the business leaders believe that they need to look at the new growth at the end of the day, rather than focusing so much on the core. Though core is still the main part of the business, but the percentage of a new growth element is almost there. So rather than acquiring certain businesses, they feel that, hey, I need to be innovative enough in order for me to find a new growth of opportunities. And it's proven that historically has suggests that companies that invest in innovation through a crisis really outperform peers during the recovery. So definitely we can see it now. But for the next 3 to 5 years, we'll definitely see a lot of organizations that adapting enough are innovators, are the one who are taking the charge in terms of providing something new to the customers will survive eventually. So be innovative to prepare yourself and organization for the work of the future. So it is a very, very strong statement in the sense that we are no longer working for the past. We are we are working for the future. We are looking for the future. And as good as, according to World Economic Forum, by certain years or eventually by 2022, there will be no less than 54% of employees will require significant re and upskilling. All right. And the reason why they say this is a lot of jobs out there will eventually be automated. A lot of processes will be automated. So we really applaud those who really have the skill of the future. So, for example, majority of you are coming from technology background here, right? I mean, of course, you have heard about like the importance of data scientists, the new jobs you have created for data analysts. So these are the job of the future. It's very, very important in the next few years. And even so, I wouldn't say in the next 5 to 7 years, but rather I would say in the next 2 to 3 years. So if you don't have these skills, I suggest that all of you, or all of us here, to keep ourselves with these skills, right? Just because that we are being selfish, but yes, there's no one else to take care of us. Definitely, organizations, your employees can tell you, hey, let's go for a training. They talk about data skills, whatever not. Yes, that's one of the things that they can do as an organizations. But I think it goes back to you, to us as an individual, to really look at how we can make ourselves relevant for the future, how we can make ourselves marketable for the future. And for those of you who already understand, already have these few skills, right? When looking at like the problem solving thinkings, when we're looking at the critical thinkings, the programming, so these are the type of job that will be very, very valuable for the next few years. And by 2025 we would see that as much as 133 millions of emerging jobs will comes when it will appear. And this is definitely something that a lot of people going to fight for. And as good as a 75 million of jobs will eventually be vanished. For example, a data entry clerks probably will not no longer be there. Even now, I think a lot of organizations they no longer have like data entry clerks in their organizations. So the question becomes is how ready are we to face this wave of change, right? And I think more often than not, a lot of organizations look at these two things on the same page, but in real fact, is two different things. So you can become a digital driven organization. So you can have all the good processes, product and services, is to technically like for you to enhance to make your organizations more efficient. It doesn't mean that you will be super successful, right? You can still be successful, but you're not looking forward. So, however, according to studies as well, that being data-driven organizations will make your organizations last longer in terms of sustainability, right? So we're looking at these two different areas or these two different angles. And what makes a successful organizations is they commonly achieve the success both in digital infrastructure and also within the data values. So this is very important when we have discussion with a lot of business leaders out there. When we try to understand, so what kind of transformation they've undergone for the past 2 years during the pandemic and also post-pandemic. They always say that we have adopting new technologies, we have adopting new systems, but according to them, they still can't really see the fruit out of it. Yeah, they can say that okay, these business processes from a 5 minutes now become 1.5 minutes, and instead of getting 3 days to make certain decisions, nowadays I only have 1 day to make certain decisions. So now the question becomes that 1 day of making decisions, is it based on the data or is it still based on your gut feels? And this is where we are as a CADS really looking at into like making sure the organizations out there can be sustainable for the long term, for the long term from a data perspective. So this is something that we really, really proud ourselves with, and we have worked with a lot of organizations from oil and gas organizations, government agencies, from MNCs, and as small as family-owned businesses. They're starting to look at these data-driven organizations mindset in order for them to last longer. So nowadays we talk about the data, how you make decisions through data. Otherwise, you would have people, some veterans still make decisions based on their gut feels. So it can be quite difficult. If one fine day after that particular person, that group of people go on retiree or change organizations, then you don't have that tacit knowledge anymore, right? So just giving you a little bit of suggestions, right? Coming from McKinsey as well. They're saying that these are 8 essentials of innovation serve as an important guidepost for navigating the COVID-19 crisis. And we're looking at the aspiration. How are we going to aspire people? How are you going to choose the right investment? Looking at the time risk balance portfolio of initiative that the resources have to win. And the discovery part of it, what kind of a new market we want to look at, what kind of a new customer target market we're looking at as well. And how are we going as an organization evolve? How are we going to create a new business models at the end of the day? How are we going to accelerate the competition with fast and effective development and launch of innovations? How are we equipping our people with such skills, the necessary skills? How are we going to give them the technical avenue for them to become more innovative? Scaling, how fast you want to be big, and to what extent do you want to win by creating the capitalizing or external networks. And at the end of the day, the mobilization of people is really important. How are you keeping them motivated, rewarded, and eventually uh, organized to innovate repeatedly, right? So I think I'm going to end like my presentation here. So really like all of us to have a very simple, innovative mindset in all of us, because it's very, very important. And that would be technically coming from individual part of it. So we as a person, yes, if you want to stay relevant, definitely we need to look into what are the areas, what are the skills that we need to equip ourselves with in order for us to stay relevant. And in CADS, so these are technically like the answer that this technically the question that we always have the answer. So we always have a conversation with a lot of business leaders, individuals saying that, hey, you want to make your organization, your people, your employees more relevant. Yes, let's look into like what it takes for you to step in to become a data-driven organization and individual. So in CADS, if let's say, for example, you have some times, please visit the CADS.ai. This is where we can have and we can let you be in our platform for free. So you can showcase your data literacy skills, for example. You can look at a lot of job opportunities. So you can look at like some of the competitions you can discover, and at the same time you still have a free learning whereby if let's say for example you're interested to learn about Python programming, to learn about deep learning, please go on into this platform. Then you would be able to find some information and train yourself, equip yourself with some necessary informations and skills. And I mean, of course, once you register yourself into this particular platform, you're not only there. We have a lot of communities out there that they're talking about data, and these data professional community is very, very strong, it's very, very active. You can post a lot of questions. You have any inquiries to any part of this data literacy, please go on and search, be in our platform, and you can ask a lot of questions. And I think at the end of the day, all of us, like I mentioned just now, to build our data literacy skills, yes, you can go to a LinkedIn, you can go to Coursera, whatever not, but the platform that we have is beyond that. We can provide you with the necessary trainings, we can provide you with the necessary sharing things. But at the end of the day, what's far more important is the community that we have in our platform. So this is far greater, uh, opportunity for you to grow and eventually expand your network. So we have more than 32 data literacy skills that you can take or you can assess yourself, right? For example, you want to understand about the neuro-linguistic programming. You can just go here to our platform and then search for this NLP and test yourself, your understanding about this. And eventually, if let's say, for example, you really want to understand further and equip yourself with these particular skills, yes, we can help you with a little bit of a training and a source of materials. So yeah, please join our platform. You can go to CAS.ai or www.cas.com and join our data professional community, because at the end of the day, we are growing our data scientist community, a data analyst community in organizations. And if let's say, for example, there's certain requirement of your organizations to hire a pool of data science, we have a more than 200 job-ready graduates that are available for hire. And these people have been trained in the data analytics, in the data science journey for data scientists, data analysts, data engineers. And these people are ready to be a part of organizations and eventually help organizations to be more innovative through data. So, yep, please feel free if, let's say, you have free times and go onto our website, go onto our social media channels, and be a part of this community because we are so eager to change the life of a lot of people out there to become more data literate. And again, I think as a conclusion, what I can say is, innovation is not really about like a bright ideas, or processes or KPIs. It's about finding the right people, and people that believe in something and people that have a true passion. So these are the people that we want to be in our team because at the end of the day, these people will make your organizations more interesting, more innovative in the future. And I mean, of course, above all, preparing yourself, your team, your organizations to the future of work is more important than ever for sustainability purposes. So, yeah, with that, I would like to end my presentations. And if feel free, you have any thoughts, any questions, any recommendations, please do type in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and then let's have a conversation out of it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rashidin, for your sharing today. I and Mila explored a lot about innovation, how it was started, who in the innovation journey, and also basically everyone can involve in the innovation with the right people and the right purpose, and everyone can build their data literacy skills. One of them is through CADS lah. So now we have arrived to our Q&A session. Do we have a question from the floor, or you can speak directly to Mr. Rashidin, ataupun can also ask your question in the chat box.
Yes, anyone. Don't worry. If no question, shouldn't be a problem. But yes, anyone, anything you want to have,
Yeah,
if you have a
anything.
different, yeah, if you have a different opinions, then you could probably say that innovative is like it's a taboo. For example, I can become innovative, but my company don't take it seriously. Then what the point of innovations, right? Yeah, you can have a different point of view as well.
Oh, we have one question from Miss Suk Yen. Do I need to hire data scientists to get started for my company?
So if I can like just give a little bit of opinion on that, I mean to have or to hire data scientists, yes, it would be very, very good. But we need to understand as well, having a data scientist means that, you are looking at things differently. You are ready, your organization are ready to become or to look at the things they've never seen before. And the role of data scientist is very, very huge. It is as huge as looking at, your organization to change the business, to turn around the business in 180 or even 360 ways, right? Um, Again, when we talk to organizations, having a data scientist will help a lot because these are the type of people that eventually could help organizations to sustain, to predict what would come, right, and to eventually prevent and prescribe the necessary approach and models, before something could happen to organizations. So yes, if let's say for example, you want to understand, you want to hire data scientists, junior data scientists, please, yeah, reach out to us. Yeah, we can help you with the necessary procedures. Yeah, I think like my colleague Susan is also like answering your question in the side chat.
So the next question from Miss Suk Yen again. Wow. We have many projects to do, but always lack of resources and time is limited. How do we know which projects to prioritize first?
Oh wow. Well, I think at the end of the day, it goes back to like what your bosses say, right? So looking at like hey, which will be the priority. But majority of the cases, when we are looking at the few multiple projects and with a limited resources, I think what's far more important is the projects that would have a very direct impact to your organization first. So we always have these two connotations whereby, direct and indirect projects per se, and we need to look into that. So, for example, that we can prioritize those who can give a direct impact to organizations. Let's work on that first. And if, let's say, for example, certain things can wait, and please channel your resources to the more important one first. Because at the end of the day, I think the to address the business needs is far more important. You need to ensure that whatever it is happening at the forefront of your business is rather important, and you need to focus on that first. So I
Cool.
see.
So, another question from Richard Yong Jin. How is the current innovation climate in Malaysia?
Okay, so these very interesting questions. I think if we were to look at the landscape of Malaysia innovations, so I wouldn't want to take the pandemic as a catalyst for change, right? Catalyst for innovation, simply because that everybody has to technically innovate themselves. But it's just a matter of how fast and how slow they are. And the conversation that we have with certain government agencies on this, they mentioned that the innovation in Malaysia organization is rather slow, and these are technically coming from majority of the SMEs. Yeah, and innovation, I mean, definitely small organization is faster or easier for them to change, to find a new things, to pivot themselves to do something else. But however, they also have that particular commands when it comes to larger corporations as well. So the reason being is, looking into for the past 5 to 7 years, when there's a lot of innovations, grind being out there, and it was just a started of it. It's a little late for organizations to technically pivot themselves or be innovative enough, and comes pandemic, right? So now, for the effort that the government has for the past 5 to 7 years, and a lot of organizations have this kind of effort for the last 5 to 7 years, everything put on hold, put on pause for a while, and technically the organization has changed drastically from being innovative towards their consumers and businesses to becoming a more of process and organization enhancement. So this is whereby they're like looking at process efficiencies, and at the end of the day, they really put that innovation aside first, because like I mentioned just now, innovation is a long-term journey. It's not a short-term journey. So once this technically what they call it the pandemic hits all of us, so they have to stop that because they know that they need to survive first. They can't really think about innovation at this point of time. But also there are some organizations being innovative enough for them to quickly pivot, right? So let's say for example from brick and mortar now they become fully e-commerce. So these are a little bit of innovations out there, but that innovation is particularly looking at the process efficiencies. It's not looking at the new target market out there. So what kind of region they want to target. So it's not really on that. So to answer your questions, the climate innovation climate in Malaysia rode rather on the reset mode, and this is where potentially I think all of us probably coming to the post-pandemic era, and this is the time where organization can start back the innovation journey.
Okay. So next question. Can you share your personal experience on any successful digital transformation project you have been done before, especially in Malaysia? What makes it successful and how its ROI being measured?
Right. So I would want to name these organizations. I mean, of course, without the name, it's one of the fund company, one of the biggest and fund, largest fund company in Malaysia. Um, so these organizations technically started off a very, very traditional fund management. So the portfolio they have is only 14 portfolios, which is rather small. And this we're talking about back in 2017. I personally involved in these organizations as a consultant, looking at the way they do the business, first thing. And we're crafting out what kind of areas they need to tap on for the next 5 to 7 years. and eventually to contribute back to some of their blueprints that ended in 2025. I mean, of course, we didn't take into consideration the pandemic in place. Um, so I mean, the very first thing we tell them that hey, you need to pivot your organization first. How are you going to make sure that the investment portfolios you have is technically a different ones, right? You need to find what are the green fields. You need to identify what are the brown fields that you can target within Malaysia or in the region or globally. Yeah. So now the thing is, while they are looking at transforming their organizations, the very first thing they had in mind was technically looking at the digital part of it or the technology part of it. So meaning to say that they need to ensure that they have the business professionals, they need to have the technology in order for them to enhance the business processes. That's a very, very fair. So now comes to 2019. They are somehow like a stuck in the middle of like a you know, hey, we have all this technology already. We have this digital journey, transformation journey, digital transformation blueprint. So, however, I think one thing that really puzzled me as an organizations is their people capabilities. Yeah. So yes, I mean, as much you can use technology to really predict, to really identify what kind of portfolios you need to invest into, but their people probably make wrong decisions. So there's something like a little bit of difficulties there, because as much as a technology, the machines is there, they can just give you what is best for you, but they don't have, or they are in fact lacking the human guts part of our human experience. So if you combine these two together with the help of data, there's something good, right? And hence, in a 2020, or rather end of 2020, CADS comes in and help them to upskill their people in data literacy. And this is when we help the people with uh, upskilling or equipping their people from data scientists to be from data analysts to become data scientists, and eventually all of them make decisions based on data and less much so from experience. So that's definitely like that's one of the very interesting journey that I had with this organization. And eventually the ROI we're looking at is from 14 portfolios, they have more than 39 portfolios, and the return or dividend they give is constantly good for the past 5 years. And it is something that we are technically proud of the team that managing this particular client. And yeah, looking at them now, they are moving forward. They're looking at few innovations they're looking at in terms of their product divestments and all. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rashidin, for a very long explanation, but very insightful. Is there any other question from the floor? So if there is no question, we can end. Oh, okay, last one. How big is the demand for data analytics professional in Malaysia? Which skill should I learn first? Must I learn programming?
Right. Yeah. So give me like 1 minute. So technically, looking at demand for data analytics is everywhere. A lot of organizations start to look at equipping their people to become on data analytics skills, right? And a lot of people also are looking at a fresh data analyst or some experienced data analyst. And a lot of organizations these days they understand the needs of having data analysts, because gone were the days whereby they have or rely on people or individuals in organizations that make decisions or based on a certain gut feels or their experience. So with the help of these data analytics, they understand that this organization knows that, hey, data analysts will technically give them a little bit of comfort that every decision they make is proven or historically proven, right, through data. So this is one organizations, like a lot of banks, they've be in this journey for the past 5 to 7 years. Nowadays, we do see a lot of government agencies are looking into this, and also like a typical SMEs, they also like a venturing into like a data space, and they're starting to hire a lot of the analysts in for the past 1 or 2 years. And I mean, of course, definitely, let's say for example, you want to what do you want to start with? What we can suggest or what I can suggest is don't really push yourself to go hard into programming, to really go into something very fancy like deep learning and machine learning, but rather start and give yourself a little bit of fundamental first for you to understand whether it is something that you want to pursue or otherwise. So the very first thing is, let yourself understand the use of Excel. Do a little bit of, uh, you know, simple analytics using Excel. We have all of us here have Excel, and once you have those analysis, right? So what you can do now is try to imagine and try to put your visualizations on paper or technically on your PowerPoint, right? And this is very important because a lot of organizations these days, they're having issues with technically what kind of visualization you have to present, reporting. So these are the main problem a lot of organizations have these days. And lastly is how you communicate yourself using the data. And this is a true fact whereby when I personally see and involved in certain training programs from universities, and these graduates, I might say that a little bit, you know, they may require it sometimes because these top-notch university students and coming from some Ivy Leagues, some very reputable universities in Malaysia, they can't sometimes they have difficulties in technically like presenting or giving out their ideas through the data. So this is where we feel that there's a lot of work has to be done. We understand these people are brilliant, are bright, but at the end of the day, these are the very fundamental skills that a lot of employees are looking at this point of time, right? So if let's say, for example, you can't do simple analysis, you cannot visualize your findings, and you cannot communicate whatever it is you are presenting and analyzing, it's very difficult for employers to hire you. So yes, so these are technically some advice I can tell you. Once you're comfortable with that, please by all means get the next fundamental, which is the programming. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rashidin, for the tips. Now is the end to the Q&A session. Before we end, can we have Mr. Rashidin again to give your closing remarks to our participants?
Yeah. Yep. Again, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. Understand that when I look at like some of you, majority of you have a TS title there, and I'm pretty sure you have done a lot of tremendous job in your organizations. And yes, I think now being innovative, you are innovative. I'm pretty sure you are the innovator in organizations. But now is how are we going to expand this innovative, make it as a team culture, make it an environment in organizations. So yes, that's if let's say for example, what I can tell you or the homework you can bring back is think yourself how you can make this innovative mindset to your organizations. You can start with yourself first. If you feel that you are lacking innovation, once you have comfortable with that, bring about to your team, bring about to your organizations, and eventually, and I wish the very best to all of you. Once you become innovative, and definitely you are become a top performer in your organizations, right? So, yep, thank you again for the organizer, my ref, and yep, I hope to see all of you again. And please take care and have a nice day. Yeah, thank you.